Indigo qualified for regionals in 5 events, the most on the team, and frankly, a ridiculous number. And 5 is a lucky number for Indigo this year because they also finished 5th place at the Harvard tournament. It's an amazing accomplishment to go along with district champion, state qualifier at 3 events, and many other amazing accomplishments from this season. Indigo has the capacity, powered by both their intellect and their spite, to excel at school, theater, speech and debate, and still retain, as McCracken said, childlike wonder. So please welcome Indigo Kuiper to an informative speech.
Me and my brother to say no to drugs. I listened. He didn't. Anyway, then I got strep throat and COVID at the same time, and my mom was practically shoving pills down my throat. I mean, I had to take one medicine I couldn't pronounce 2 times a day, and the other I had to take, I kid you not, 6 times a day. But apparently, some drugs are better and more acceptable than the beer medical marijuana combo my brother bought some days my mom will be home with. But enough about my home life. Antibiotics are in widespread use around the world and have been for quite some time. So let's make like Nancy Reagan and dare to do drugs. By first, learning about how antibiotics work and are made. Then we'll check the side effects, seeing how they affect our body and our world, before finally laying back and having a good time, discussing the impact of the usage of antibiotics and what it would mean if they were stopped home. Now, antibiotics are more than likely something that you are very familiar with. Authors Matthew Hutching, Barry Wilkinson, and Andrew Truman write that in just over 100 years, antibiotics have drastically revolutionized modern medicine, extending our lives by 23 years. However, since 2017, only 13 new antibiotics have been developed, and of those 13, only 2 can be termed as innovative. So, what determines innovation? Well, according to the Cleveland Clinic, antibiotics work by killing bacteria or stopping them from multiplying. Looking a little closer, different classes of antibiotics each target various specific areas of bacteria's reproductive process, but which part of reproduction it affects varies from class to class. The cell wall is the primary stress-bearing and shape-maintaining element in bacteria. So, some antibiotics will focus on inhibiting cell wall synthesis. DNA replication and transcription is vital to bacteria synthesizing proteins, which the cell needs to stay alive and reproduce. Some antibiotics, therefore, will focus on inhibiting nucleic acid replication and transcription. Translation, or the messenger RNA translating the transcribed nucleic acids, is also important for protein synthesis, so this is another area that antibiotics will specifically target. In cases where protein synthesis has already occurred, antibiotics can target enzymatic activity, or how efficient the enzymes are, thus interfering with the cellular metabolism. Now that I've basically just taught you the entirety of my AP Bio course, innovation is determined by if an antibiotic has a new way to come at attacking bacteria. Now, you might already know some of this because of how often you've been prescribed antibiotics. You probably go to get them whenever you have an infection, or a sore throat, or maybe even a slight fever. Pretty much whatever ails you at any given point in time, that's what makes antibiotics so great, right? But according to the Johns Hopkins Medical Center, antibiotics are for bacterial infections only. Colds, sore throats, upper respiratory infections, and the flu are all caused by viruses, which antibiotics cannot kill, prevent, or stop from spreading. According to the Center for Disease Prevention and Control, At least 1/3 of pediatric antibiotic prescriptions are unnecessary. But it can't hurt that much to have a little extra antibiotics every once in a while, right? Well, the bacteria tell us otherwise. As I mentioned before, we have many different kinds of antibiotics that have only improved as we have had them for longer. Unfortunately, the Missouri Department of Health reports that overuse of antibiotics is creating stronger germs. Some bacteria are already resistant to common antibiotics, also referred to as antimicrobial resistance. Kelly Clarkson effectively simplifies this topic with her lyrics. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Stand a little. Not only are these bacteria becoming resistant to some of our antibiotics, in some places they're getting resistant to all of them. The Harvard Medical School published. At some point, most people have taken a course of Bactrim or Cipro, two common antibiotics used to treat UTIs. The article then goes on to state that many UTIs have become somewhat resistant to these and other treatments. In the Tulsa area specifically, Bactrim and Cipro will not work at all. And while up-to-date medical providers prescribe treatments that still work, like Catholics, other doctors are still trying Bactrim and Cipro, growing the resistance to all of them. Now, outside of human diseases, which is a somewhat justifiable use for our best resources, is the infamous meat industry. According to the National Institute of Health, the emergence of resistant bacteria in the food industry is essentially due to the abusive and sometimes incorrect administration of antimicrobials. Because the meat industry is a $900 billion industry, it is focused only on continuing its mass production without any genuine regard for the consequences of its actions. If feeding every cow destined for slaughter the top-of-the-line antibiotics means that in 20 years we won't have any way to treat anything, then I guess they'll worry about that 20 years. Speaking of big industries ruining our lives for their own gain, the pharmaceutical industry, which is a $1.6 trillion industry, engages in things like disease-mongering, which somehow sounds just as bad as it actually is. The National Library of Medicine defines it as including turning ordinary ailments into medical problems, seeing mild symptoms as serious, treating personal problems as medical, seeing risks as diseases, and framing prevalence estimates to maximize potential benefits. Basically, the pharmaceutical industry does not gain anything from spending money on the growing concern of antimicrobial resistance, or even working on preventative measures, because if they were able to successfully prevent diseases, then what would they sell? Because there's not enough money in the air. Not nearly enough people are working on it, so the resistance is only getting worse. Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus states that antimicrobial resistance is a global health emergency that will seriously jeopardize the future of modern medicine. The World Health Organization has identified antimicrobial resistance as one of the top 10 global threats. In addition to multi-drug-resistant tuberculosis, WHO has identified 12 classes of priority pathogens that are increasingly resistant to antibiotics and urgently in need of new treatments. In some developing countries, multi-drug-resistant tuberculosis is so bad that the only solution when someone is diagnosed with it is to forcibly detain them for the rest of their lives. Dr. statements, if the only way to manage it is to forcibly define, then it must be done. Ultimately, in such crises, the interests of public health prevail over the rights of the individual. Yet, aside from locking up terminally ill individuals, nothing is being done. What people fail to recognize is that if this gets out of hand, we will be forced to go back to a time when people feared common infections and risked their lives for minor surgery. Although the United States hasn't seemed to catch on to these critical facts, other countries have, and the impact might literally save the population. 26 world leaders have come together and agreed on a plan known as antimicrobial resistance, accelerating national and global responses. They're working harder to prevent infection, providing universal access to quality diagnoses and treatment, and using strategic information, effective governance, and financing. These countries are actively working to prevent this spread in the future. This is known as antibiotic stewardship. Because of these antibiotic stewardship programs, Large hospitals have become limited and heavily dependent on the restriction of designated antibiotics. Additionally, countries are agreeing to use only one kind of antibiotic at a time, allowing the bacteria time to lose all of its other immunities, in turn making all the antibiotics more effective. Industries that expedite these problems are also being limited. Because of the increasing knowledge in the area, the meat industry has been completely barred from using the best of the best antibiotics. So, I guess ultimately I have to agree with my mom to say no to drugs. Not the fun ones, don't worry, but the ones that my doctors say are good for me. So, maybe next time I have strep throat and COVID at the same time, I'll try one of my brother's illicit methods rather than risking the entire population. Just kidding. While antibiotics have revolutionized modern medicine, extended our lives and healed countless infections, they also come with challenges we can't afford to ignore. Whether it's by limiting overuse, promoting innovative research, or holding industries accountable, we all have to say no to drugs. And I can't believe I'm going to dare to say this, but Nancy Reagan was right. Thank you.